Malone. Bill Malone. Whether you watched any of his DVDs on the loose, anything, whether you watched his L&L tapes, whether you saw him on YouTube as a kid like I did and was one of the millions of views of things like Sam the Bellhop, or whether you just know who Bill Malone is, or whether you don't, this is going to be an incredible episode because Bill Malone is one of those guys in magic who basically has it all covered. Sleight of hand, he is absolutely at the top of his game. Entertainment, he is hilarious and the most entertaining force with a pack of cards that you've ever seen in your life. And in business, he is known as being one of the top paid magicians, and this is somebody who is not like running around on TV specials, running around doing these things. This is just somebody who did it through being amazing, being entertaining, and building incredible relationships and giving you the tools. This is somebody who just embodies every single aspect of Discourse and Magic. I've been a fan since I was a kid, and without further ado, we get into all of the details of what I just spoke about in as great detail as I possibly can. You are going to love this legendary episode with a legendary magician. Please enjoy a wonderful, wonderful episode with the one and only Bill Malone. Bill Malone. Bill, how are you?
Yay! Oh, it's just me. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill, and this is going to be a good show. I can tell you right now. Anyway, I'm here with some guy, and I don't really know what this is for, but I'm going to do my best.
Well, you know what? That's good enough for me. Well, welcome, Bill. First of all, I'm really, really excited to have you. And on a personal note, back in the day when things only got onto YouTube because someone snuck it on there, you were one of those videos. You're on the loose videos on YouTube that I don't know who uploaded. I don't know if it's a distant cousin of yours or someone on the other side of the globe. I don't know. But, those videos, I don't know who uploaded it, but that was like one of the first, pieces of not magic on TV, but like close-up magic happening for an audience that I watched over and over. That's what introduced me to what even L&L was. So pretty incredible to chat with you now, and very excited to hear about how maybe some of those things came to be.
Oh, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Let's zoom back all the way to the beginning. Let's talk about how you even got into magic.
Let's see. I'll try to make it as brief as possible. I had a neighbor that lived across the street from me. I was about maybe 14 or 15, and he took the cards out one day, spread them across this carpet, and did a spread turnover with the cards. And I think that's what hooked me. I went home that night, and for hours, I just sat there trying to do that spread turnover. And by the morning, I had it down, and I was hooked. I wanted to learn more and more.
That's amazing. So you watched somebody do a spread on the table and you got hooked. What was next? Did you go to a magic store, a library? How did you know where else to go?
Later on in high school, when I would go to study hall, there was a guy that would sit across from me, and he would do little things like the ball and vase and a couple little sleight of hand things like, fake transfer. And I taught him my spread and turnover, I know, for a false transfer. And then we would get together all the time, like 5 days a week during study period. And then he told me there was a magic shop downtown Chicago called Treasure Chest, which later on I found out was a pretty famous store where a lot of great, unbelievable magicians worked at. And I started going in there, and I met my first mentor, Lee Wayne, who was the demonstrator behind the counter. He took me under his wing, and he started teaching me sleight of hand, and he was really good at what he did. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be the Bill Malone I am today.
Why is that? What was it that he did that rubbed off on you?
Well, he's the one that gave me the confidence to get my first job in magic. He told me about a restaurant bar that opened up on the south side of Chicago. And he told me to go there and audition to try to get a job. And basically I told him I would, but I knew they wouldn't hire me. I had only been doing magic for about 6 months. So there was no way in heck they were going to hire me. So I didn't want to let him down, so I told him I went there, but they didn't need anybody. In other words, I lied to him. And the day I told him that, he took his hand and he pounded it down on the counter. And he said to me, "It's their loss." And he walks away. And I felt so bad inside. I mean, I really felt bad. I never had a person. My dad died when I was like 12 years old. So I never had an adult figure that was really, besides my mom, that was really looking out for me. And I could tell that day he really felt that it was their loss. So to prove myself right, I went back there the next week to the restaurant and I really did audition and I got the job. So I came back and the first thing I tell, his name was Lee Wayne. First thing I tell Lee Wayne is, "Hey, Lee, first of all, I remember when I told you I auditioned for the job and I didn't get it. That was a lie, but I went back and I got the job." And so literally without him, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing because I never wanted to do magic as a professional. I just liked it as a hobby. I think I liked the way things worked. I liked the methods. They were so cool to me, and the more deceptive, the better. And I love visual things, and I just wanted to know how they work. So I would practice really, really hard. And then when I got that first job, that was at a place called Little Bit of Magic, a bar in Chicago. That was the very first place I performed at, and you had no experience. Nobody taught you how to go up to the table or how long to spend at a table or what to even say. And that first night, I'll never forget it. It was so scary, and the people were very polite and very friendly. And of course they say, "Oh, you're so good," but you're really not. You don't know anything about it. Nothing. But I learned very quickly because I had to. It's the sink or swim thing. You either got to get good or you're not going to last there long. And anyway, that was the beginning of all of it. So really it was because of Lee Wayne that I not only got a love for the art of magic and a love for sleight of hand, but I also got out there in front of real people. I never thought I'd perform in front of real people.
Both from my research and from just a research of you, but also like the knowledge of the time period, you were in Chicago doing magic in a moment in time in Chicago with Chicago close-up magic. There are all of these bars, all of these venues, creating all of these, magic legends, in that time period. Who else influenced you? And can you talk a little bit about what that scene was like?
If you would have asked me this same question, say 20 years ago, I think the only person I would have named that really influenced me was Ed Marlowe on a sleight of hand point of view. But really, now that I'm older and I look back on my life, I was influenced by so many people that I didn't even realize at the time. I got to work alongside of the greats. I worked with Heba Habel, twice a week, every week for like a 5-year period. I worked with the great Ernie Spence, who was one of the greatest bartender magicians of all time. In my opinion, I think he was the greatest even. I worked with some really good people. Don Allen, I knew. Jay Marshall, I knew real well. There were all these people that when I was young, they were just nice people. They were, you didn't appreciate them for being the legends that they are. You just hung out with them.
Right.
Even Marlowe, even though I knew how great he was, to me, he was just a nice guy. So I didn't realize that these were these guys were going to inspire me throughout my magical career. Now that I'm older, I think back and I think, there's so many little times in my life that I was super inspired by people. I'll tell you one that I learned early on. And I think this might be the best one. When I worked at Little Bit of Magic, and like my second day there, I was performing at the tables. And again, remember, we didn't know anything about this. So I'm working for this elderly couple and I'm in the middle of doing my trick and she puts her hand on my hand and she says, Sonny, when you're done, would you have that guy come over here? And I look up and I look around and I see this table with a whole crowd of people and everybody's laughing and having fun. And his name was Rich Papura. He was a guy that worked there in the beginning too. And we never got time. This was only my second day. So I never had time to watch any of the other magicians work. So I was just worried about doing my own thing. But now when she said that and I looked up and I saw that crowd, I thought, boy, I want to see what's going on over there too. So when I went over there, I saw Rich, and I met Rich the night before, of course, and we did some tricks for each other. And he wasn't a sleight of hand guy by any means. His magic was good, but in a way it was great. It was better than good because it was him. They were liking him. It wasn't what he was doing, it was him. And so when I went over there and to tell him that that table wanted him to come over when I was done, when I approached his table, I just stood in the back for maybe 2-3 minutes. And instantly a light bulb went off. This guy was likable. He wasn't performing card tricks like here's a trick, here's another trick, here's another trick. He was enjoying the audience. So instead of just sitting there and saying, okay, here's another trick, he'd say, hey, what's your name? Or where are you from? What do you do for a living? Oh, you guys are having fun. Move over here. You can see better. The more he was breaking character and the more he wasn't doing the trick are the moments we liked him the most, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And that's something about that night, that evening, for those 2 or 3, 4 minutes, however long it was, it just led me on a way where I knew exactly what I was lacking. I was lacking being a person. I was lacking entertaining people. I was just doing my trick. I was looking down at my hands and just, probably because it's only my second, third day working, but still I recognized it right away, the difference between performing for an audience or performing with an audience. And when you perform with an audience, that's where they love you and your likability can shine through.
It's amazing. It's amazing that you share that lesson, because anybody who has seen you perform or seen your material knows that it is a freaking riot. It is an absolute riot of energy and of excitement. And, part of that obviously comes from your want to focus on entertainment. Like if there's 10 minutes and there's one great trick, but everyone is having an absolute ball, an absolute blast, then you're doing your part. I used to make a joke that, the sick joke of magic is that it's the indoorsy puzzle loving type who gets into tricks, and then somebody tells them one day that they have to actually be entertaining and go be personable and leave their bedroom, and all these people who got into it, who are the ones who like solitude and puzzle solving and whatever, realize one day that they actually have to step out and be entertaining. Can you talk a little bit about that entertainment, how you internalize that and how you put that into some of your magic to make it so much fun to be a part of?
I don't know if I can or not, but I will try. Okay. If you asked me this question a long time ago, I would tell you no, because when I was young, I knew that I had something that was always making people laugh and having fun, but I couldn't quite define what it was. I didn't know the process of what I was doing. Now I kind of know the process and I know what I do. And I'll talk about that. But first, it's just the word entertainment or entertaining. What does that really mean? What makes something entertaining? I used to try to come up with the answer to that, and I really can't. I mean, what makes something entertaining? Better music, more energy? No, it's none of that stuff. To me, if I had to define it, like in my own shows, the feeling that I get when I'm performing is the same feeling that they get when they receive my performance. So to me, that's the entertainment. It's on both sides. Like when I get an audience that I see is really getting me and getting what I'm doing, oh my God, I can get them in the palm of my hand every single time. And when I have as much fun as they do, when I'm done, you know, and I think, oh my God, I can't believe that happened, or I can't believe that happened. The show is new to me too, because I'm constantly in the moment. I think being in the moment is a big part of entertaining. I think, okay, little pieces of entertainment that I think, if we want to talk about what some magicians, a lot of them lack when we say they're not that entertaining. I think the reason is they just don't understand how to keep it going. How when you get introduced and you start, you've got to keep it going. There can be no lulls. When there's a lull in anything, your whole timing is gone. It now just becomes somebody watching your trick. But if you're constantly keeping them involved and keeping them interested, that's an important word. What you do, whether it's funny, whether it's comical, or whether it's serious, if it's not something interesting, you're not going to keep them, no matter who you are. So those are little things that I think is entertainment. To me, it's like, to be entertaining to me, I just turn on, because I know these things are in me. Like, there's days, you know, where I get in the whole 2 days leading up to the show. I'm nervous for every single show I do. And I've been doing this over 40 years.
Really?
I've done very few shows that were terrible. And their stories are a riot. We could do a whole show on those. But for most of my life, I'd say 95% of my shows are always fun for me to do. I have as much fun as they do. But I get nervous for every single one of them. You would think that I'd be able to just phone it in.
Not phone it in, but it is actually surprising to me that, you know, at this point in your career, you know, like you don't, like, even though you know, and I know, you know, going into the room that you're going to rock the room, you know, like you telling me now that still you go, I'm nervous. Like that's funny for me to hear, you know, as somebody in the first, you know, 2 decades of my performance, I guess I hoped that I would grow out of it or something, you know what I mean? Like, it's funny to hear that you don't.
Well, see, you used a good word, the word hope. Right. I hope I do a good show every time. I don't know it. I hope it. I pray for it, you know? And it's like something happens, you know, everybody says this, something happens when they introduce you, you just get out there and all those nervousness ends up helping you. But in reality, I'll tell you, one of the most important things is you have to care. It's not about the tricks. You have to know the tricks and everything, you know, without thinking about them, without looking at your hands, where you could do anything and mess up anything and be able to get out of it situations. But the biggest thing in my world, because I have 2 lives, I'm a professional magician. I make a living from magic. And at the same time, I'm a student of sleight of hand and magic. I love it. I just love it. And the friends I've met in magic, I just love being with my friends. But so I have like 2 hats that I wear. But because I make a living out of it, I care, because I make a lot of money doing magic. Knock on wood, I built up a good business. And they pay me a lot of money, and I truly believe in my heart that I got to give them their money's worth or more. Every time I try to give more. And I know people say that, but I don't think they really abide by it. I abide by it. Every event I do, I literally care. I will not settle for less than a killer show. You know what I mean? And then I used to make a mistake when I was younger. Let's say I get a show and it wasn't up to my scale of what a great show should be. But they don't know my scale. They don't know what I can do to an audience. So to them, even me doing a mediocre show, to them is a good show. Yeah. Okay, because I'm still going to make them laugh. I'm still going to fool them. I'm still going to be some kind of character they've never met before. You know, it's going to take them by surprise. They're going to think it's your basic magician walking in to do some magic tricks, and I'm going to be more of a well-rounded entertainer and try to change the atmosphere of that meeting whatever it is. So it's like I try to figure out exactly what my clients need. Then I talk to them and try to figure out what they want. Now, the reason that's so important, they don't know what they want.
Right.
Not until I'm done interviewing them do they know what they want. And then they know I know what I'm doing. They know I'm not there to look like a star. I'm not there to be the big shot magician. I'm there to help them solve or be a solution to whatever it is they're looking for, entertaining their customers.
Let's talk about that for a second. I mean, I want to return back to the entertainment for a bit, but I think this is a good path to go on. You're known in the industry for having taken magic to a level of success that is difficult, to bring it to, especially that you do not have a theater in Las Vegas that people are going to, you know what I mean? You're not on TV every single night. Like, you're an individual, you're a magician who has risen to a level of success. What are some of the secrets? There are people at home that, they can't figure out how to get someone to pay them more than like $250 or something for a show, and they're hearing some of the zeros that are on the end of a paycheck for one show, and they can't even fathom. What's the secret? What's going on? I know you shared a little bit of it there about talking to your clients and understanding.
Yeah, let's get back to the prices and how to charge money and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, when I was younger, I used to hear from the old pros, people like Jack Pyle and Jack Codell and Don Allen and these guys, how they would do a show and they'd get all kinds of other shows from it. And everybody I talked to, pretty much back in the old days, that's the way they got their opportunities. So I used to remember when I was like 18, 19, 20 years old, I would do these little private parties, but I never got called back. I did a good job. I mean, I really did, and it used to bother me because I thought, well, everybody's telling me that they get all of these shows, but I don't get it. I'm not getting it. And it was only because I didn't know it then, but later on in my life, I knew why it was. It was because the way I was brought up with my manners and stuff like that was I would get hired to do this little house party or something. And I'm supposed to be there from 2:00 to 3:00. And I'd go there at 2 and I'd leave at 3. And I would do my job, get in and get out. I never did any networking. I never talked to my clients. I never talked to the people at the party. All I did was, the most that I might do is give my client a business card, even though he already had it or he wouldn't have called me, and say, hey, if you ever need me again, let me know. But then it's years later that I learned I wasn't doing it right. I later learned it was people you meet at these parties that you talk to. They want to get to know you. They don't want you to pack up your stuff and leave, especially if they enjoyed you. They want to talk to you. And they all ask the same questions, So if you have a basic answer to a question that they ask and you tie it into another event that you did, it opens up another. I talked about this in my On the Loose tapes a lot. It opened up another idea for them to hire me. And after a while, you start to get more and more shows. I remember one time I met Don Allen in Chicago. And about 2 weeks later, I'm working in a little bit of magic, the magic bar I'm at, and the phone rings. And the guy comes out of the kitchen and says, hey, Bill, it's for you. I was working a table. So I leave the table. I go to the kitchen. I say, hello. And the voice says, hey, Bill, it's Don Allen. I said, Don Allen, I can't believe you're calling me. Because I just met him. I've only known him for 2 weeks. But he liked me because I entertained him. And the reason he liked me because I didn't do any of his material. And he disliked people who did his material, even though it was all published. So I could never figure that out about him, but that's the way he was. He says, hey, Bill, I have an opportunity for you. I have this little party. I can't do it. He says, and it's just whatever it was. It was a walk around things because that's all I did in those days. So he said, told me what it was. It was for an hour or whatever it was. He told me how many people. He said, how much would you do it for? And in those days, I started, my price was like $125. Then it went up to like 175. And now I figure it's Don Allen. So I said, okay, it's 225. He says, okay, Bill, you got it. And he says, can I ask you a question? And I said, what? He says, why 225? And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, why isn't it 200 or 300? I said, because that's what I charge. I didn't even get where he was coming from. So then he explained to me. He says, Bill, you should always charge an even amount. Because if you charge somebody, if you say your rate is $1,500, then that's your rate. It's $1,500. There's no ends or buts about it. If you say your rate is $1,175 or $875, the first thing that comes to your mind as a buyer of entertainment is
it begs the round number.
Yeah, it's like, how did you get to that number?
Yeah. Now
they want you to break it down, and are you going to say gas, mileage, blah, blah, blah. If you do, forget it. But so I learned that lesson early on. And I always learned to charge even amounts. Another thing that's very important, no matter how much you charge everybody the same price. Don't ever raise it, ever, because this is some big company like Google or Apple. Don't do it. It's going to come back to you tenfold. And the thing is, I know so many professional magicians. All my friends are great magicians. But there's a lot of them that are really great magicians, but they don't know the business end of it. They really don't know what to charge. And they think they're not going to get the job if they charge too high. It's not necessarily true, but let me tell you why it can be true. It can be true if you're working for some little talent agency that's getting these little gigs and they think all magicians are alike and all they want to do is make a profit on you. They don't care what you do. Whether you're there for an hour and it's 10 people, you do close-up magic, or whether it's a 10-hour show and it's 10 people, they don't even think about it half the time. In those situations, it's true. It is about the money, because they're looking to make money on you, and they're just selling you cheap, and they're selling the flowers and the tablecloths and the everything.
And the magician,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but the entertainment is the most important in my books, even more than the food. You could have a terrible food at an event and then see a show that's killer and forget all about your bad meal. But you can have a great meal, and if the after dinner show entertainment is bad, you don't remember that great meal. So to me, the money should be put in the entertainment. But anyway, I think magicians, well, I got to be careful how I say this, because first of all, I'm talking about magicians that really are good, that know what they're doing, that are worth a lot of money for what they do. If you're a magician, you've only been doing it for a year. You might be some kind of superstar and be unbelievable right away. I can see that happening. But for the most of us, it takes a good year or so of working a lot to become good. And once you become good, your rates can go wherever you want them to go. And I'll give you a secret. Sometimes the higher your rate is, not only the more do they respect you, the more they take care of you, the more they give you the right requirements, the more they give you your full
rider, or yeah,
right. But they leave it up to you. How long of a show do you want to do? Well, to me, I want to do as long a show as it takes to get the job done.
Right.
If they're going to look at their watch and say, okay, he's on for 5 more minutes. Oh, he quit 5 minutes early. None of my clients, if I quit a half hour early, if I was there for an hour, they wouldn't care if I got the job done. And I would stay 3 hours if I didn't get the job done. So all my clients know it's not about time. I could talk about a whole bunch of things, but I don't want to ramble on because I know we don't have a lot of time. So let's get all the important ones.
I mean, so far this is incredibly valuable. And I think it's maybe a good opportunity because you were talking about the environment and you were talking about, with the type of client that you work with, they're usually saying to you, hey, what should we do? How long should you be performing? What should be going on? And that's maybe an opportunity to ask you a little bit about performance environment. I know that you do trade shows and you do close up and you do stage and all that stuff, but specifically, like there's a place in my heart for a table show. There's a place, one of the reasons why I was obsessed with your magic as a kid, and there's other people who have really fallen in love with, like Danny DeOrtiz, who also really does, that very often, Tamariz as well. And I'd love to ask about the viability of those shows in a professional environment. Is it something that's kind of like a guilty love, you get to do when you can, but most of the time you're on stage, to do the big bucks, you're on stage? Or no, this is what I do, this is what it looks like, and this is, just for example, what's that like? How does that stuff play out in the real world?
Well, let me start by saying this. When I first started in magic, I worked in bars. My first 10 years was bars and restaurants. That's pretty much all I knew. And during those 10 years, I would do private parties, maybe 10 or 20 a year or something. And the private parties were always fun because I'd make a way lot more money than I would just working in the restaurant or the bars. The next step, I went to working in hotels because they said there was corporate trade shows is what you want to do, everybody said. So I got a job at the Hyatt Regency downtown Chicago, and I worked where attendees that went to the trade shows were in the hotel. So I met a lot of trade show people and started doing hospitality suites trade shows. I also had a period when I did colleges, just colleges for about a year. Then I got lucky when I went to Florida. I not only worked for resorts and stuff, but I started doing the television, the world's greatest magic and all that stuff. Then I opened Malone's Magic Bar. So I have experience with almost everything. But like you, I call it the close-up show. That one man, it's like a one-man show, and it can be done anywhere as long as you set it up and it's right. And it's got to be the same setup every time because there's a lot of things that can make a break or show that if you don't make sure it's the same way every way, it's a lot harder for you to deliver a great show. So what happened to me, it was because of the television shows. When I started doing the television shows, my clients all looked at me differently now. It wasn't, Bill, put your stuff over here. Here's what you're going to do. Here's what time you're going to go on. You're going to go on while they're having dessert, blah, blah, blah. It changed to, Bill, what do you think? What's the best way to work this? And I would tell them, it's a small group. Why don't we do a special thing? Why don't we set up one room with a table and chairs in a semicircle around it, and maybe put some bar stools in the back where the back row can either stand or sit up high. And I'll give them a performance where from the moment I start to the moment I leave, they'll be laughing. I said, it will be high energy fun for everybody. And I said, and it goes on, it's set it up in another room. And then when their dinner is over, get everyone's attention and say, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat for you tonight. We're going to bring everybody in the next room. And you can take a break, go to the restroom, get a drink, whatever you want, but then be back here in 10 minutes and come to the other room. So anyway, they would come back to the room. They'd all get their seats. And I'd give the guy an introduction for me, which for me was always a funny one. And then the show would begin. And from beginning to end, just like I promised them, it killed. It'd be better than anything that they would have thought of, because I knew if I got them together in a room, I already have their attention. The hard part of getting their attention, before those days, I remember they would just throw you up there with a microphone or even worse, they would have a disc jockey say, and now the magician, Bill, and you'd walk on stage and people are eating and talking and, you knew it was going to be a disaster before you start. Luckily for somebody like me, I could overcome those things because I was never afraid of, talking to people, stuff like that. But, it's very important that even when you're younger, even when you're starting off, once you do start to, if you're a professional and you start making some money, really think about what makes a good show. What things do you need to make a good show? Think of what those are, write them down, and have that as your writer. But you don't give it to them like, here's my demands. So here's how I would probably tell a client, like if you were my first time client, I would say to you, after you tell me what you were looking for, I would say to you stuff like, can you tell me a little bit what the room will look like? Or how were the people, did you have any entertainment last year? How was the group? Were they conservative, not conservative? Are they a talkative, fun group, or are they serious and more, problem solving group? Because all this stuff helps me. Because then after I get the answers to their questions, I'll say things like, well, let me just tell you from my side, and I've been doing this for a long time, what I suggest for your show. Instead of doing this, which I think is a great idea, it'll work. I'm not saying I won't do it, but I think I may have a better way. And this is a suggestion to you, and tell me what you think. And now I would give them my ideas, which is really my writer, but I would say why these things are important. I wouldn't just tell them what I wanted. I would, in one sentence or two sentences, tell them how important it is to have their attention in the beginning, how important to have the host introduce me and not somebody else. If the CEO is in the room, he's the guy to introduce me. And the reason is simple. If Mr. O'Brien introduces me and he says, here's, ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, Bill Malone, people are already liking me because they know he likes me. And they're not afraid of waiting for him to laugh where they can laugh. So those little things are so important. I create a rapport with the most important guy in the room. That's part of my writer, that someone like that introduces me. I have a million of those little things that I do.
I mean, it's incredible because as you say them, first of all, they're all different little like tidbits, but they sound to me like sales influence things. Like what you're saying on the call, how you're putting those out. It sounds like sales. Really drawing it out, hearing about what their needs are and wants are, and then sharing what you're offering in terms of what it is that they need in the real world, but in reality, how often does it play out that you end up doing, the close-up show of your dreams? And how often does it play out that you end up, standing on a stage doing what does it end up in the real world?
The show is usually it's either a stand-up show or a close-up show. The only time I'll ever do walk around is if when a really, really good client asks me to do it, then I'll do anything for a good client. Like I have clients where I do 40 to 50 shows a year for just one client. And wow. I have way more than one of those. So
can you talk about that for a second? What kind of person would hire you for 50 shows a year?
Well, companies that trust you, that right. know you're going to deliver a good show every single time, and right. companies that do a lot of events.
Right.
Companies that do a lot of events. Like I'll do, just to give you an idea, I have a retainer with a lot of companies where they give me so many shows per year. Even if I don't do them, right. I'm still paid for them.
Wow.
Because they have me on a retainer. So if a show cancels, doesn't matter. I'm still there. But this way they get their dates. They right. get the first right of refusal, on their dates. And my clients are clients that just are like me. They have the same sense of humor. They're the same kind of people. They work hard and they play hard. Right. And they know when I'm there, they're going to have the time of their lives. Even if they've seen the whole show before, they know it's going to be different because I rewrite a show every time I do a show. Even if the tricks are the same, it's a totally different performance. But
totally. I want to talk a little bit about the overlap between entertainment and sleight of hand. You joked about leading two different lives. By day, you're a performer, and by night, you're obsessed with sleight of hand and card mechanics and stuff like that. First of all, I'd love to just talk about maybe the uniqueness. In my eyes, there's not a ton of performers. I think of also David Williamson, as people who have the technical ability to in the 99th, percentile, and are also the most entertaining person on the planet. So I'd love to hear, from your perspective, how much does the sleight of hand actually impact, like, now your working repertoire, or are you kind of doing the same 25 classics that maybe don't require the most knuckle busting things, that you do when you're performing? How much do those two worlds overlap? Are they the same world, or are they really, one is of personal pleasure of, card tricks, and the other is entertainment?
I think it's a little bit of both. Here's what happens. Okay. Like, when I'm the sleight of hand guy who likes doing moves and learning really technical sleight of hand, and even learning like gambling things, which I'm never going to use, but I just enjoy it. I enjoy making something really deceptive and be able to do it in a casual way and deliver a line as you're doing the move. And, thinking of ways that you could do technical sleight of hand where it looks like you're doing nothing. And it's nothing to do with really changing the method sometime or the thing. It's just your attitude. It's the way you put the deck in this hand, or you say a crazy line in your palm. It's just a way of doing things. I mean, those are the things I love to do. And I get real wrapped up into it. But I also know that my bread and butter is magic and entertainment. What happens is, when I get out in front of an audience, as much as I want to do these little new nuances and stuff with sleight of hand, some of them never work. Even though I plan to do them, I don't, because the entertainment, again, because I care about what I do, I'm being paid money for the entertainment. So I don't have time to stop and think about what kind of shuffle I'm going to use here. I'm just got to be on the roll. And if it feels like a strip out, I'm going to do a strip out. If it feels like I should do a zero, I'll do a zero. Nothing is ever the same. So what I do is I throw sleight of hand out the window when I'm performing. Not that it's not still good, very good. I mean, nobody can see or catch me with what I'm doing, but I don't put in those little magician little things that I think about. But I end up doing even better, because when you're really working, you have all these gestures that are real gestures. And now this becomes really good sleight of hand. You're no longer, when you're practicing sleight of hand, you're in a little box, like your little close-up pad, and you never leave that little pad. Everything is tight, real tight. But when you're performing, you're all over the place. I mean, you could palm a card just with a touch of your hand. You don't need to think about the technique. It's automatic. And when you're really performing, everything you're doing is automatic. So those two hats, they go hand in hand, and they're great. But, it's funny. I got to tell you one thing. In the very beginning, we talked a little bit about Beyond the Loose tapes. And I love doing those, and they were so much fun. And most magicians have only seen me perform live from those DVDs. And I never did those DVDs for real audiences. I did them for magicians, to teach magicians. Had I known that somebody was going to put all those clips on YouTube, I would have never have done that whole project. Wow. Because the lines that I used, the things that I was saying, was to make magicians laugh. It was more to make I'm used to going to a magic convention and having all my buddies there. And we have these little jokes in magic that we do. You say to a layman, hey, cut the cards, not at the crimp. Oh, you missed the crimp, little things like that. I would have never said that at a layman event, So later on, after these tapes got put all over YouTube, and they became, everybody thought, oh, Bill Malone's always doing all those million one-liners, and he's got all these lines that he does, and they all think I'm very funny, but they don't have any idea that most of those lines in corporate I could never use. I wouldn't be successful. You know, you got to know when and when not to do those things. And I just told magicians, though, if you see me at a magic convention, I'm out of my mind. Why? Because every time I meet somebody new, I try to make them laugh. You know, I mean, I try to get people to just have fun at a magic convention with me. I guess sometimes I'm on too much, you know, but there's a real serious side of me that really thinks out how to do things, how to perform, how to entertain, when not to say something, when to say something. So if people judge me just by those early magic DVDs, which were 20 something years ago, that's really not me as a performer at all. It is as far as the energy and the fun and the laughs, but it's just totally different. You know
right.
what I mean?
It's not the magic. It's not the words. It's wow.
No, and it's not a corporate audience either. It's a whole different style audience. So that was me just having, what I was trying to do was, in all honesty, I've never had a lot of confidence in what I do. Never have. So when I did the On the Loose, those first DVDs, I didn't think they were going to be any good. So my job was to keep these people laughing as much as I could, because if it ever went silent, right, and they weren't reacting or laughing, I felt like I wasn't going over. And the moment I feel silence, to this day, my timing gets thrown off. I always want some kind of a reaction. It doesn't have to be a laugh. It doesn't have to be applause, but just an answer. Like if I ask you a question, have you ever seen the trick with the Jack of Clubs? Have you ever seen this? Oh, too bad. I've always wanted to learn that trick. But I would ask questions just like this, just out of the blue.
Right.
If I think I'm not going over or I've lost them, I would say something like, I'd be in the middle of saying, okay, so let's do a trick using the kings. As I'm taking out the kings, I would be thinking in my mind, it's quiet. So by the time I got the third king out, I'd say something like, hey, do any of you really care about these tricks? Really? I mean, come on. These kings that even look like they're in the mood to do a trick. Let's do a different trick. You know, right. It's a matter of just keep talking.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
You know, there's a word that comes to my mind that is not a word that I would have thought of, but since I read it in The Magic Rainbow, it's one that I can't get out of my mind, which is rhythm. The word that comes to mind is rhythm. There's a rhythm to the performance. Da 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 ba 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 ba. And if it doesn't have that rhythm, that's when, you know, it loses everything. Everything starts fading. You know, it's kind of about, you know, the interaction. It's about keeping, I don't even want to say the attention. It's more than that. It's beats. It's actual timing. Like you can feel the moment when the joke should have happened, you know, like you said with the Kings, you say, we're going to do this thing with the Kings. And it's like, it's now, you know, it's like you can feel the tension of, so there's something to rhythm going on there as well to keep the audience with you, like in every moment.
Yeah. I think I've always called it, you know, I like the rhythm, but the thing with rhythm, the last thing you want to do is have a rhythm of boppa da boppa da boppa da boppa da boppa da boppa da boppa. Because then your next show is going to be boppa da boppa da boppa da boppa da boppa. After a while, you know, it's like some bands that all sound the same. No matter what they sing, they sound the same. It's a matter of controlling that rhythm. I call it more of a breaking character. Like let's say I'm going to do that, and I say, let's say I got high energy, and I say, okay, let's do another one. Let's use the four kings. Would you help me? There's a king, and here's another one. No, you know what? Let's not even use the king. You know what? I'm going to call home. Hi, honey, it's me. You know, I'm in the middle of a show. You're waiting for me to do a king trick. No, I was gonna, yeah. No, but I don't have. I couldn't afford a full deck, honey. Yeah, there's only 3 kings in a deck, so I can't. Okay, thanks, bye. You know, and then I say, okay, and now I'll go just into something else. But
yeah.
It'll be so unpredictable and off the wall where I go to. I can visually see them look at each other like, what? You know, but that's where I get them. That's where they fall in love with me, because they don't know. They
never know where you're going. They never know if it's going to be a joke, a trick, A gag or nothing, or just
right?
nothing.
Or something serious,
Right.
and sincere. You
Yeah.
know, here I'll give you something real quick. One time I did this show, and at the end of the show, I waited for them, and none of this was planned. It was all just done. I waited for it to all kind of die down, and I said something like, "Oh, folks, please stop it. Come on. The show wasn't that good. I was here too." I said, "But I got to tell you the truth. When I do a good show, I go home. My wife always tells me on a scale of 1 to 10, how good was the show, and I'll be honest with her. If it was a 5, I'll tell her 5, whatever. But when it's a good show, I always tell her one thing: I had as much fun as they did. And tonight, I want to let you guys know I had as much fun as you did." And now I know that sounds cheesy. I know it sounds bad, but I truly mean it. When Sally did this during the card trick, it cracked me up. I'm going to try to remember that the rest of my life. When Bob, well, that's not even Bob, whoever that guy is that fell off the chair, that was hilarious. So I would go through little things that happened that evening. Then at the end, I would say, now I'm at a place in my life where I could pick and choose my clients. I used to, when I was younger, when I had to make a living at Magic, I'd have to take any show that came. But now I only take shows from clients that I like, clients that I feel I had a good time with. And I just want to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, it really was a 10. I had a great time tonight. Thank you guys. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Good night. And then they'd applaud. Sometimes now they'd even give you the standing ovation. But I never did it for that. Now I would stop. And right when the standing ovation is going down a little bit, I'd walk off and I'd say, I can't believe they bought that stuff. You know, and now they laugh all over again. So you take them to the sincerity level, and then you kill it with a joke. But here's the best thing, the thing that I don't know. Sometimes when you do these things, so anyway, I knew that was a good thing, and I can tell you why. After that little thing was over, I had my client walk up with one of the guests, and I'm putting my stuff away. And I'm trying to remember the words that I just said, because I knew it got a big laugh, and I knew it also got me for people to stand and really give me some applause. So at the end, I wanted to remember that stuff, so maybe I could use that again and see if it works. But here was the icing on the cake. My client walks up with his client and customer, and the guy says, "Excuse me, Bill, I want you to meet so-and-so. He owns whatever it was company." And I put out my hand and I shook the guy's hand, and the guy said, "Yeah, I'm so-and-so." And he goes in his wallet, he takes out his card, and he gives it to me. He says, "I wonder if there's any way you would consider doing a show for us." I've never had somebody in my life ask me if I would consider doing a show. But because of that little speech of being at a time in my life where I could pick and choose, this guy really got it. And he knew I was serious about it. And he asked me that, and right away that light bulb went off. Man, that's great. You can really, if you get sincere with your audience and they like you enough at the end, you can basically have people really wanting you to do a show for them even more than they did before. And they know you're special because maybe they can't get you. So now your price can be more and everything can be different.
And I wanted to maybe share one thing that you already said, but I just wanted to share in between the lines, which is that you also have to be phenomenal. And obviously you are phenomenal, but that comes from years of being, I literally say you need to be overworked and underpaid as a magician for years, and then you can be really good. Like, it just seems to be, you need to kind of be working every single day for many years to get really, really sharp, which you mentioned, but I'd love for you to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I believe that that's very true. What you do and the tricks you perform and the way your personality is, the character you choose, the pacing of your show, the timing, all that to me goes without saying. Those are like things that are for sure. I mean, if you're not an amateur magician and you're not doing it for just the love of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some of the best magicians I know are amateur magicians. But if you're going to do it for a living, all that stuff goes without saying. But here's the thing that I think separates the men from the boys, especially in the business world. It's so much more than being a good performer, being a good entertainer, but you got to have those things. You have to. Otherwise, you won't make it far. Anybody can get a show once, but doesn't mean they'll get it again. The whole key is getting repeat business over and over again and keeping clients and building up a list of stack of clients where if one industry goes flat that year, you still have clients in another industry. So your eggs are never all in one basket. So important. But here's how you win them over. And it's easy, but it's not. It's easy if you really tell your mind that you're going to do it. And it's delivering. It's delivering not what you want to be a good show. It's delivering what they're looking for. You got to know what they're trying to do and what they need. And like I said earlier on in the call, sometimes they don't even know. So you have to drill down their thoughts to get what they're looking for. And in the end, they're trying to they think they're trying to entertain their best customers. That's what they'll tell you. It's not till you drill that down and you ask them things like, well, how long have you had some of these customers? How'd you meet them? How'd you know this guy? It's just like conversation. Then you realize, well, hey, these customers mean a lot to us. They're our whole business. Just 3 of these guys make up our business. Bill, if you could just make those 3 people remember this evening, it's worth it to us. So now all of a sudden, you're getting this info from them that they didn't even really know how to describe to you. The more you get them to tell you exactly what it is they're looking for and how they know these people and why they're good customers, you can't even begin to put on a good show. The more I know about an event, this is true even if it's a private party. It's true even with a little event. I mean, I did the auto shows for 6 years from all over the world, from here to Australia. And I did it that long only because every single show was different. And I had to write a different script, but I knew what they wanted. I didn't use their script that they gave me and said, insert this sentence here and here. I told it all in my own words, and that's what they liked, because the customers, I was more like a man of the people versus an executive telling you what to do. That's a really important thing, is if you want to be really successful, man, really take what you do, take all that love and passion you have for it, and give it to your customer. Start, learn these methods and learn the tricks and the lines, and then start thinking, man, I'm going to go there and I'm going to kill them. I'm going to kill them. Not that they're going to applaud that their card is the only face-up card of the face-down deck, kill them. But no, you delivered, man. That was one of the best events we ever had. That guy knew what he was doing. That one face in that room wasn't smiling, and they loved him. Another thing, I had this company years ago. I had for like 25 years. I would do their hospitality suite 2 nights in a row and their trade show 2 days in a row. And it was always like the same 40 or 50 people that visited so think of that, 25 years, twice a year, it was me entertaining the same people. And finally, I told my client, Mario, and I said, Mario, why don't you, basically it was because I was tired of the stress of having to deliver I loved them, but it was like, it was getting too much on me. I said, why don't you have somebody new? I'll get you somebody that's really good and give me a break, and it'll give your customer something new to see. Give them a chance to see something else. He says, Bill, I can't do that. I said, what do you mean? He says, even if I wanted to give them somebody new and have a new magician, I couldn't do it. And I said, why? He said, my customers would say, where's Bill? And if I said, oh, he wanted to take this year off, they would think, no, you did it. You got somebody new in Bill's place. So that's the effect. You got to have, some people think you've got to just do good for your client. Like you'll do magic for a little while and then you'll see the client with the group and you think, I'm going to go kill over there. There's my boss. This is it. you got to kill for every person in that room, because those are the people your client want you to perform for. I'm on a ramble right now, but I got to keep going, because here's another thing. When I used to do walk around, I used to notice that at the end of the evening in most walk around events, people would start following me. And at the end, I'd have this big crowd and I'd just keep going. And I enjoyed that because the reactions were louder and better. And then I realized one day, here's my client now. Whereas my client was always too busy, his table, I'd never even usually get to perform for the client. So I used to think, wow, I love when I do this, because a lot of times the room, it kind of takes over and then the client comes over. So then I started thinking about that, and I was thinking, when I started doing the walk around, I always would watch. And usually for the cocktail hour, that's when the CEO is really busy, because it's people coming in saying hello and talking. I could walk up to him and do a couple of tricks and it'd be okay. But still, I'm not going to get rehired again. I'm not going to be one of those magicians that says to every group I work, hey, if you like that trick, make sure you tell Mr. So-and-so on the way out. Believe me, after the second person goes up to Mr. So-and-so and says, oh, by the way, the magician was really good, he knows what you're doing. It's a dumb thing to do. But I figured it out. I figured out how do I get the guy to know that I'm doing a good job here if nobody tells him. So I figured it out. I was thinking, I like that thing at the end where everybody ends up gathering around. And it happens because they see me all over. And by the end of the night, they got nothing else to talk about, so they're coming over. So now I would go up to the biggest group I could. Biggest meeting, I mean maybe 6 people or 4 people. I wouldn't go up to just 2 people ever at a cocktail hour and start, ever. Go up to maybe 6. I'd wait for their opportune time. I would do a couple of tricks, and really strong ones. I would know it would be something that would make them want more. And as soon as I knew they wanted more, I'd say, hey, you guys, would you do me a big favor? See those people over there? They look sad, don't they? Do me a favor. Why don't we make a little bet? I'll bet you, I'll tell you what, I'll come and do more magic for you if I win. But I'll bet within 30 seconds I can make those people laugh. And they bet with me. So I'd go over to the other group. They'd all be watching. And I would say, folks, my name is Bill. Now all they can see is me spreading the cards. But I'll say, folks, my name is Bill, and I got to talk fast. I have a bet with those 4 people looking at us that I can make you laugh. So do me a favor. Would you all laugh now, please? And they all laugh. And then I turn over to them. I say, hey, see you later. So now I do a couple of tricks for them. So I say, do me a favor, folks. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to show you some more. Now I would go to those people and I'd say, I won the bet. I said, but do me a favor. I'm going to have you guys come over here. Us all to get together. They're really nice people. And I would bring people together in one quarter of the room and I'd start performing. Now I would go to the diagonal corner. Because, see, when I have a big group like 20 people, when I say, hope you enjoyed that, I'll be back later and do more, they all start applauding. Now the boss or the person that hired you can hear that. Even if he's talking to other people, he hears. He doesn't have to see the trick to know that it's going over. Whatever that is, getting applause in that room right now is working. So let's have it again next year. That's how CEOs think. You know what I mean? Let's have that. So when next year comes, how about the magician? We had the magician. Oh, yeah, have him. Because he remembers that everywhere in the room he heard this big applause. And that was me getting groups not doing like a regular walk around, but starting off like I'm going to do walk around, but really not. I'm going to herd people together. And then I'm going to entertain them. I'm going to do it at every corner.
It's amazing. It's really helpful that, a lot of us think that our job, I love what you said, is to be like, is Tim watching? Hey, I'm entertaining these people. Is Tim watching? Or worse, hey, Tim, can I show you something? Oh, I'm too busy. Oh, hey, Tim, can I show? Oh, I'm too busy. Really, our job, it makes me think of somebody once told me on this podcast, I think it was Chris Westfall, but I think he said, when you go to a magic, when there's a kids show, You want to tell jokes that make the kids laugh and also make the parents laugh, but really you just want to make the kids laugh, because if the kids laugh, the parents have a good time. And it's the same thing, right? Like the CEO really doesn't care about magic. I mean, maybe he does, but you are helping him solve a problem, and he needs to see that the problem is being solved tenfold. That's what he wants to see. He doesn't care what card you find.
It's even more than that. It's like you're doing what you're being paid for. You're earning that money. So if you charge $10,000 a show, believe me, that might sound like a lot of money to somebody. It's not if you can give them what they want. Because this room of 30, 40 people sometimes is worth 30 or $40 million to this company. If you can take those people to another level and change the atmosphere of that evening where everybody had a good time and they were able to network better, talk better, you're worth that 10 grand and more. The other thing, and I learned this from doing the auto shows. In the auto shows, I wasn't paid from an entertainment budget. When you're paid through an entertainment budget, it's not a big budget, because people think bands are one price, magicians are another, blah, blah, blah. But when you're hired from a marketing budget, having a speaker for 10, 15,000 is nothing. Come out and speak for the group for an hour. So once you get to that level where they're hiring you, they know you're a magician, they know you're an entertainer, but my clients aren't hiring me for magic. They're hiring me because they know that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. I'm going to give those people the time of their life. And I'm going to take them on a ride that hopefully they'll never forget. And I really do. I believe in my heart, even though I don't have a lot of confidence, but I know I deliver in that. And you know why? It's because I can't not deliver. The day I don't care and the day I stop delivering, I don't want to do this stuff anymore. To me, that's the fun of it. To me, performing is delivering. None of this whatsoever that I'm saying is in any way egotistical or bragging. I'm just happy that I've had the successful life I have in magic, and I'm blown away at how it all works. And if I can help magicians be better magicians, better at business, better at performing, better at anything, I'm in. Because magic's been my life. It's all those people that helped me in the beginning. I wouldn't be Bill Malone without any of them. I have all their DNA in me, and I'm a mixture. And Bill Malone came out of that. And I'm into giving every single thing I know about everything. And it doesn't even mean that I know anything, because I'm just giving it to you, my life. But it's so real. At least I've been there to talk about it, and I know it's worked for me.
100%. I want to ask a question about getting to that moment, and this may be a strange question, but a lot of times when people reach out about the event, if the company is large enough, it's not obviously the CEO who's reaching out. It's somebody that they're sending to go find a magician or go connect or whatever. And a lot of the times it's very hard to have some of the conversations that you're talking about. Who are these clients to you? How are they important to you, with the assistant or whatever that's being sent off to go and gather entertainment? Do you have tools that you use to put yourself in that conversation with the CEO, and almost, to echo what you're saying before, go from the conversation about the entertainment budget to the conversation about the marketing budget?
I do. But for me, in a way, it was kind of easy, because whenever I get hired by a new client, it's usually some other client that recommended me. And they recommend you so highly that they believe the other guy, and they just hire you sight unseen, So sometimes I might get a call where the guy says, "Hey, my name is Ringo Starr, and this other company saw you, McCartney Company, and they asked, they said you were really good, and we want to see about having you for our event." And I would say, "Well, could you find out who they knew, who they talked to at the other company? Because I'd like to thank them for that." So they find out and they tell me, "Oh, it was Mr. So-and-so." So now after I talk to them, I'll talk to them maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll say, you know what, can I call you back in just a little bit? Because I have a phone call I had to make. And so I would wait, and I would call the other company that referred me. And I would talk to them, and I'd say, thanks a lot for referring me like that. That was nice of you. Who did you talk to? And they'd say Bob Baker or whoever. And now when I get back on the phone with the meeting planners in an hour, I would say, hey, sorry I had to get back. So let's get back and talk about what was the date of the show. And who was it again you said that referred me? Was that, and if they say it was the president, I'll say, oh, was that Bob Baker? They say, yeah, Mr. Baker. And I said, would you do me a favor? Would you tell Mr. Baker I really appreciate him wanting to have me, and ask him to give me a call? They can't say no to that. They can't. But usually they don't want to do that because they want all the credit of it. But I only do that when the meeting planners are not going along or even listening to your ideas of what makes your show good. So for me, it's easy to do. But what I'll do, let's say that you are a meeting planner and you hire me for this thing, and I give you what I need to make it. And let's say you tell me, well, Bill, in this particular event, we can't get all the people together in one room and do a show the way you want it. It's going to be like this. And I'll come right on and I'll tell them, well, then here's the way we got to do the show. I can't do the close-up show then, or the stand-up show. We'll have to think about this differently. And now I'll give them other ideas. A lot of times, though, they'll come back to me and they'll say, you know, Bill, we thought it over and we decided the way you wanted to do it, we can do it. And I know that what it really happened was they went back to the boss and they said, no, Bill really said it won't work that way. And he doesn't want to do it, so we're going to go another direction. And that guy said, no, what did Bill say? You know what I mean? And then you get it in there. The whole key is you want to, when you get a show, let's say it's a private party, it's easy to get to the guy who's putting on the party, because just say, even if it's a planner that's doing it for him, say some celebrity or whatever, just say, I would love to meet him, even for 10 minutes before the show, before it starts. So, or if he could call me before the show, I would love to just tell him what I do and introduce myself. They'll almost always say, yeah. Now that person, when you got the person that's putting the show on and is paying for the show, he'll listen to you with open ears, because he's not a meeting planner where everything is done the same way every time. See, a lot of times meeting planners are afraid to upset the apple cart. They've been doing these events for so many years, they're afraid to tell their client, we're going to do a different.
The magician said no, he wants to do it this way.
Yeah, no, it's not even that. It's not even that. They're afraid to say, would you mind if instead of the cocktail hour being done out in the foyer, could we bring it inside? You know what I mean? They're afraid because for 10 years, they've done it out on that foyer. So they're afraid to ask their clients. They literally are. And then you got other meeting planners where their clients are easygoing. They could ask them anything. They say, yeah, no problem. You know. So, but if you talk to the client, they listen to you and they think, you know, that's true. It is hard to get people's attention when everybody's talking. Why don't we sit them down instead of having a meeting and some over here and waiters going around? Why don't we stop the service, you know, when the show comes on, so there's not glasses rattling and stuff like that.
I want to talk about Malone's Magic Bar, and I want to talk a little bit about what that experience was like. I mean, like producing shows or putting on events at the bar. And, you know, I heard, and you can tell me if this is wrong, but I heard that, you know, you did a certain level of training with the magicians. You educated them, you taught them. Obviously, we don't have the time for the training, but first of all, I'd love to hear a little bit about the environment, especially now that, I mean, not now pandemic, but this, you know, all of these different magic bars and magic venues are opening up. So I'd love to hear about that. And also, what are some of the keys in the trainings? What would you tell these magicians that they needed to know?
I would tell them in the very beginning, I'm not looking for unbelievable double push-offs or passes that are invisible. I'm looking for people that have a great personality, that are not afraid of talking to people and know how to entertain. And when I used to audition magicians for Malone's Magic Bar, a lot of times they'd come in and they would do stuff like this. They'd wave their hand and a giant coin would appear on their hand, and then they'd strike a pose. And I didn't want to tell them, well, that's not what I'm looking for. I really am. Show me, just do a trick for me and talk to me and walk up and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. It's very nice to meet you. It's not even during the audition that I would make the decision whether I would hire them or not. It was usually the 10 minutes before and the 10 minutes after would make my choice. Because it's like I wanted to see how they communicated with me, not just on a trick level, not on patter and stuff like that. It was, what's your personality like? What's your smile like? What, do you have likability? I guess it would be. So Malone's Magic Bar. Remember, I had experience. I worked a little bit of magic, New York Magic Lounge, Houdini's Magic Lounge. I worked for like 7 different restaurants in Chicago. I worked for hotels, everything. So I got experience, and everywhere I worked, I learned something from. So I took all those lessons, and before I had Malone's Magic Bar, I had Houdini's Pub 2, which was in Fort Lauderdale. And, I'd have a couple magicians working there along with me, and it was fun. It was fun teaching them, and they would watch what I would do, so they got a quick handle on it. Malone's Magic Bar, I would teach them how to be what I call commercial magicians, meaning how to entertain laymen. We don't care about anything magically related. After work, we could go sit around and try to fool each other with the latest and greatest. That's fun for us. But let's focus on what makes people laugh, what are routines that are proven. And I would tell every magician, each one would need a signature piece. So each guy that worked for me, I would take their best trick and let them keep it. But then all the other tricks, they would have to change. Not right away. They'd have like a few months to do it. In other words, I would make them perform new things, because here's what I didn't want. We had like 4 magicians a night, and the Boca Resort was a really famous resort at that time. We had presidents, celebrities, the biggest CEOs in the world would walk those halls every day. We were a 2,000 room resort, and we were the only, there was only one other bar besides us in the place. And it was really filthy, wealthy people, successful people from all walks of lives. So to entertain those type of people, you had to do it a certain way. You had to have class about you, likability. You had to be well dressed. You had to kind of have it all, right? So because of that, if you were with your group, let's say you were president of some big company and you brought in your group, it wouldn't even be bringing in your group. You could have a group of 500 people at the resort. So every customer is in your group. But you would come in the bar too, probably. And if the magicians entertain you and you never saw a card on the ceiling, and you're the CEO of Ford, and now it says Ford and your name on there, you're going to tell everybody the next day, we went to that magic bar, and sure enough, I wrote my name on the card. You can see it when you go in there. And now you go in there the next night, it's busier because they told everybody that weren't there. And then they go in and they tell the magician, hey, do that trick with the card where it goes on the ceiling. And they would say, oh, no, we can't do that. He said, what do you mean you can't do that? They say, well, that's not our trick. That's Mike's trick. Mike's off tonight. He'll be in tomorrow. And I would schedule every other day sometimes just for that reason. Because what I wanted to do was I wanted to make the magic really special. But even more important, I wanted to make the magician special. I wanted to make it be his signature trick. You can always see that from Mike. So now they'll give him a big gratuity when they ask for that trick. If I was to just say, okay, yeah, card on the ceiling, here you go, and I let anybody do it, it looks like anybody can do it. It looks like the bartender could probably do it. So now that trick goes from this high standard, to something little. Some of the magicians, they didn't really get it. They thought, well, why can't I do it for them? And then I'll get a tip that night. They didn't understand what I was trying to do. I mean, I was trying to do a lot of things that they weren't aware of, just, because that they only saw it through the lens of a magician most of the time. I had some unbelievably great magicians work for me. I had Lance Pierce, Chad Long, Corey Allen, many really good guys that were really entertaining. We'd have meetings every 2 weeks, and we would talk about doing lines, and doing a trick we've been doing our whole lives with a little tweak, and it was a blast. But some guys never wanted to be at those meetings because they didn't want to have to learn something new. And I always felt, why are you doing magic if you don't want to learn something new? And they were all making lots of money. I mean, they were making $400, $500, $600 a night in tips. It was a really good place. But I loved it. The experience of that was just great. And I had so many guys write me after that, and thank me for Malone's Magic Bar and the time they had there. But it was, I would teach them how to approach a table. I would teach them the amount of time to spend at the table, when not to go to the table. One of the biggest things I would teach them was acknowledgement. Was if there's 5 tables in the room and your job is to entertain them all, you have to be alert. As you're working, you got to see these people coming in. And if they make eye contact, give them a wave while you're working. Say, hey, welcome to Malone, see you in a bit, and then go back to your table. Because you have to know what the order was. So when it got busy, this one table doesn't call the manager over and say, I've been sitting here all night and no magicians come to my table. That's bad for the venue. So I would teach them, like, even where to stand, never have your back to the wall. It's got to be facing the door so you can see, what's going on. And I wasn't like, where you have to do this immediately and you have to learn this. I was like, these are the things that you got to learn. And after a while, it becomes natural. When I worked in the bars, I learned it because I not only did the tricks, I waited on all the guests as I was doing the tricks. So my mind was on the business. So that's what I tried to teach the magician. I tried to teach them about learning the business and being funny, choosing great tricks that work, stuff like that. It was fun.
This is kind of a weird question, but this is the last one that's just on my mind before we get to the wrap-up questions. But I'd love to hear a little bit about the history of how Sam the Bellhop ended up being a routine that you made quite popular. Where did you? I know there's obviously plenty of different like deck stories, in history. Where did you discover that? And tell us a little bit about how that trick made its way into your repertoire.
Sure, there was a guy. First of all, me and a good friend who passed away a while back, Bill Dennis was his name. We were back at the old days before I ever got that first magic restaurant job back in the downtown magic shop days. We'd hang around together all the time. And the first lecture I ever went to in my life was John Mendoza back in Chicago years ago. And me and my buddy, Bill, we were move monkeys at that time. I wasn't even thinking about performing yet. And it's the first time I ever saw a zero shuffle was John Mendoza. And we both looked at each other and we were like, oh my God, what do you mean those cards aren't shuffled? So we went home and we practiced that shuffle and practiced it. We couldn't believe it. It was a miracle that you could riffle shuffle cards and you could spread them out and no card is mixed. So I would practice the zero shuffle. So one day I'm at New York Lounge and Nick Pappas was one of the owners. His son, Mike Pappas, was in there and he didn't work there then. This is when he was just visiting. And he's sitting at the bar and he does Sam the Bellhop. Now, Sam the Bellhop was the way Frank Everhart did it. It was a story trick where you turn these cards over, and then twice or three times during the trick they were cut, and you basically told a story and turned the cards over, and that was it. And I saw that. I saw him do that, and I at first I didn't really like it. I thought, well, the cards are just in order, and he's turning them over, because I'm a magician. I'm not looking at it like a layman. But to a layman, any story trick where the cards are in order and it's matching the story, I don't care what the words are, who the trick is, Sam the Bellhop or Joe the bartender, or whatever. There's so many, Diamond Jack or whatever it is. King in the Nightclubs, Chuck Smith. That's a great one. No matter how good the story is, it's entertaining. So I thought, boy, and then the light bulb went off. I thought, man, what if
zero plus story?
Yeah, what if the cards were shuffled when you
right? Yeah.
So now I thought, what a great way to practice false shuffling. So that's the only reason I learned Sam.
Oh, wow.
Nothing for the story. And then I started doing it. And after I started doing the shuffles, I started doing the flourishes, like the flip over and all those little things. So I added flourishes and shuffles to Sam the Bell, to any story trick. I'm the first to do that as far as the shuffles, the flourishy ways. So it became a little more entertaining because it's more eye candy. And it's now a problem. It's like, well, how's he telling this story? Now, some could argue that people think I'm shuffling the cards into where they got to go. And sometimes I might pretend that I am. I might be looking at them as I'm shuffling. Sometimes people just think they're coming out like magic. Maybe some people think, well, he's shuffling, but I don't know how because he knows where those cards are,
Right.
Quite frankly, I didn't care what they thought. I just.
But all of a sudden, it's now a magic trick, right? It's now like actually is. Yes. You watch it and you don't know how. It's not just an entertaining thing. It's now a magic trick. It
went from an entertaining little vignette.
Yeah.
To an entertaining mystery.
Totally.
Not only that, but now I started putting in all these little asides, like, sucker, I mean, sir, would you cut the cards? Or, or saying, Mary, can I call you Mary? Mary? But I had all these little sides. So I'd say, could you cut the cards? And they'd cut, and I'd pick them up the same way,
Yeah.
So now that became breaking character to me. So that became my likability. So I had all this going for me. I had a story trick that if anyone told it, it would be fun. I now took it up a little level by shuffling and flourishing. And then the asides added the likability for me. It also established me as a performer where, man, this guy's a machine.
Yeah.
You can't stop this guy, and don't try because he's quick-witted. You know what I mean? Because they knew I had a line for everything and I wasn't going to miss, and this thing was precision. So that's where Sam the Bellhop came from. But I never saw its brilliance. You know who did? Jay Marshall. I would go to Fector's, and Jay Marshall, the first time I go there, he had me perform. So I performed Sam the Bellhop. Goes over really well, extremely well. I was surprised that magicians would enjoy it as much as they did, but they did. And then the next year I'd go and Jay would say, I want you to perform again. I said, okay, I'm ready. He'd say, I want you to do Sam the Bellhop. And I'd say, well, I did that last year. He says, no, do it again. So I do it again. Third year, same thing, do Sam the Bellhop. I said, Jay, I want to do something different. He says, Bill, let me ask you a question. And I said, okay, what? He says, do you think I like doing lefty all the time? And I said, I don't know how you can, because I sure don't like doing Sam the Bellhop. He says, right. But that's my signature trick. That's my commercial trick. That is the one people like. That's what they want to see. So you give it to them all the time, always do Sand the Bob. And that's kind of why it became my signature trick. Because once Jay told me that, that's what I went and did. And he was right. That's where I met Gary Ulett, and Gary Ulett was at Factors. And that's where I got put on World's Greatest Magic. And that was the reason. So.
Wow. And it kind of goes full circle with that advice of signature piece. And so quite incredible. We are now at near the end of the podcast, where we have some wrap up questions that I ask every guest on the podcast. The first is the endless chain. So in order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be really, really phenomenal for this kind of conversation. Who is somebody that comes to mind that you think would be really, really good for this conversation? There's two catches. The first catch is I can't have had interviewed them already. And the second catch is you have to be able to put us in contact in some way, potentially.
Okay. Can I give you three?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Charlie Fry.
Great.
One of my closest friends. Just brilliant. He's real show business. Way more than magic, just real show business. Lance Pierce, as far as a guy that knows magic, sleight of hand, performing, everything, just a brilliant, one of my best friends in my entire life, and still to this day, one of the best magicians I've ever seen in my life. And number three, who I can't guarantee you'll get, but is always Steve Forty. But that's for a gambling point of view.
And if you can help me do that, oh man, what the things I'll do. So, but yes, those are three incredible recommendations. The next section is about modern magic. So a lot has changed in the world of magic, not only in the last year and a half with respect to the pandemic, which we didn't even talk about, but also, in the last couple years, there's just been a lot going on. What's something in the world of magic that you like that's been happening? And what's something in the world of magic that you don't like?
Oh boy, it's hard to say. There's a lot of things about virtual magic that's too long to talk about here that I don't like. Things, because, I guess, I've heard there's been some people that have made pretty good money at virtual magic, but I just can't see it in the real world because a lot of it is so, I don't know. What's some of the new things? There's some magic going on that I watch on YouTube every day. And I don't know if it's just because they did it 100 times or got the angles correct, or I have no idea what's going on. I see guys all the time that blow me away with things, just blow me away. I don't know what's happening. But I do think there's a lack of presentation. And I think it's because magic is, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying it's wrong, but magic is going back towards, it's all about the trick. Watch this trick in effect, and that's it. I don't agree with that. It doesn't mean that I'm right, but I still think that the magic is in you. It's what you do that brings you out. The audience should like you more than the magic always. So even if there is great effects out there, and it may make laymen appreciate magic more, but it doesn't make laymen appreciate the art more, because sometimes the performer isn't really performing, he's just doing, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah.
Totally. It's hard to say what doing means, but doing to me means you just have a lack of ability to sell what you're doing. You're doing it and it looks great and you can't figure it out and it's beautiful and visual, but there's nothing there that's connecting me to it, that's bringing me in.
You said earlier about the difference between performing for your audience and with your audience. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. But, having said that, man, I'll be honest with you. I see some beautiful magic. I'll tell you one thing. And this makes me think about the difference, too, of a magician versus a guy that entertains with magic. And I guess we're talking about that old thing of a person playing the part of a magician, or is he a magician? Or whatever. I really don't care as long as he entertains me. I could care less if he's an actor or, whatever. But when I saw Derek Delgadio's In and Out of Itself, I thought this is the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. I've always known Derek as being a great sleight of hand magician, and he's always been a good friend. But what he's done, he's just gone to another level. He understands on a really deep level, way more than I maybe ever understand, how magic could be used in a way where it's not, here's a trick for you. It's used to tell a story, or it's used to really connect you in some way. There's a real example of what I love about magic. It's just a whole other thing.
You would not be surprised how many people have answered that question of what they love about magic with the exact same guy. So
I'm surprised I'm one of those people to be smart enough to do that, but I'm not surprised people have done it.
It speaks to what he's done there, that so many people are so moved by it, that it's something that moved magic so far forward, I think, or at least showed what it was capable of. It's quite incredible. The last thing here is plugs. Where can people find you? Where can people find your material on the World Wide Web?
Well, I haven't done really anything since, on DVD since the Marlowe DVDs, and that was a long time ago. I occasionally will get on some internet thing. Like I'll get on with Ben Earl once in a while if he's doing some big thing, because he's just such a good friend, a good guy. I'll get on the internet with friends of mine and stuff, but really magicians don't really get a chance to see me because I don't really do conventions, because usually I'm going to lose money by guaranteeing I'm going to be at some magic convention for 3 days. Now I'm not working anywhere, so it doesn't matter. So it's really hard. I haven't done a project, but I've been working on a book now for 4 years.
I was about to say, all of these stories that are dying to get out, all of this advice about magic and business that's dying to get out, all of this, what can we maybe cross our fingers and hope that may be coming? Is it a book? How far are we?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a book, and it's going to be everything that I know about magic, about sleight of hand, about performing, about everything. There's a whole business section. And then there's a section on tricks. Some of the tricks magicians have never seen me do, which are full pieces. And I explain why I do the things that I do and why they get the actions they do. And I really do try to be complete. I'm trying to tell them everything that I know that I could possibly think of, where it could help their life in magic be as good as mine has been. I really, I hope and pray it's a good book. And the reason I say that, it keeps rewriting itself. It's like I started the book with 2 or 3 things in mind that it was going to be, but it's kind of written itself. It's taking its own direction. And I'm not a writer, but I have a great friend, Rich Kazmarek, a friend of mine from Reno, that's helping me, a really smart guy, but more than a smart guy, just a really great friend. So he's giving me a lot of help. And the process is long, but enjoyable. I think about what I do more. I wouldn't be doing this podcast probably if I hadn't been writing for a few years now, because I now can talk about what I do and in a better way than I used to be able to.
Well, Bill, I'll take 10. As soon as they're ready, I'll take 10. I'm excited. I'm very excited for the project. And I want to thank you so much for sitting down to do this. You're a real magic hero of mine. And this is, this means a lot. And this was above and beyond incredible. So thank you.
I'll do it anytime.
Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something and can take something away from this. Now, it was pretty easy to take something away from this episode because it was absolutely packed. So if that was easy for you, then maybe I can challenge you to do one thing. You're part of a magic club, a magic group. It could be a group on Facebook. It could be a club in person. It could be something. But you're a part of a community, and it would mean the world if you shared this episode with the community. I think it makes a big impact to have people hear about experts. And if you didn't know who Bill Malone was, then I hope you do now. And if you did know, then please help in spreading his amazing magic with the world. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being a part of this podcast. And I'll see you next Thursday. Peace.